Welcome back everyone to Track Habit Garage. It's time for another installment of what can I do this weekend in the little bit of time that I have. It's going to be a hodgepodge of stuff, but I do primarily want to focus on getting the drive shaft in, wrapping up some small things in the engine compartment, and basically getting it ready to start. And a big part of that is putting on the exhaust. So I'm going to take you through my exhaust system, what I'm going to do this weekend, and then hopefully give you updates along the way and see what all I can get done. Fingers crossed I can finish up the exhaust, get fuel in this thing, and start it up before too long. I do want to give a big shout out to Black Widow Exhaust. They provided a nice stainless Venom 250 for this build. It's going to sound great in there. 3-inch centered input with an offset output. Should be perfect for what I'm looking to do on this. I can only really fit one muffler under there. I'm not looking to cut another hole in the back, so we're going to try it with this single 3-inch exhaust, see how it does, and then go from there. But super excited to have them along on this build, and thanks again for the hookup. Alright, so here's that Venom 250 from Black Widow Exhaust. Nice stainless muffler. It's also got a little coating on it. Hopefully, should stand up to what the road throws at it. Won't rust, won't corrode, and most importantly, sound great and flow very, very well. Next, another big thing for this car is we have the Custom Driveshaft. I actually just got this made today, and I took it down to Driveshaft Pros in Ventura. I was super lucky. They just happened to have this flange here that fits the Datsun R200 rear end that I have in there, and it's a beefed up size as well. Really nice part, definitely going to be an improvement over what was in there. Then they custom made this 3-inch DOM steel drive shaft. Down here we also have a bigger yoke that goes into, a bigger U-joint attached to the yoke that goes into the T56. All made to custom length, looking good, and they finished this up for me in just a few hours because they happen to have all the parts there. That was super awesome. One other thing, I do have some fuel line that's running a little bit close to the headers and some other things that get hot. So I'm going to put multiple layers of heat protection on it. One of them is this DEI heat shroud. This is actually pretty cool because you can just Velcro it around it, so I don't have to pull those fuel lines back out in order to wrap them. So I'm going to throw that on, prevent any heating issues with those fuel lines running anywhere around that exhaust. I also got these LED headlights for the front. I'm going to go ahead and put those in. The one downside is they're really deep compared to the stock lights. So essentially what I have to do is hole saw out the back of the headlight housing to get this heat dissipator and fan assembly and everything back in there, and then figure out a way to seal it up ideally to still keep it protected from rain. I've hole sawed out both the holes, and I don't know. I'm going to figure out something to keep it protected. I don't know what right now, but that's definitely not on my priority list. Also have a few wires in the engine compartment that still need to be wrapped. Picked up some more of the plastic heat resistant wrap there. Going to do that. I also used some plastic zip ties in some areas that I shouldn't because they're in high heat. So I picked up these metal zip ties. Going to go through and replace the plastic ones just to make sure we don't run any issues with wires coming loose in that engine compartment or anywhere under the car where they're going to be exposed to heat. The wires are already protected, but the wrapping around them, or not the wrapping, the zip ties are not right now. They're plastic, so that should be a big improvement. Also, as part of the exhaust system, I'm going to go ahead and, of course, put on my O2 sensors. I have the curved ones here that should fit nicely on the 3-inch exhaust. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. Some new O2 sensors as well. Going to throw those in. So this is all the boring stuff, but just taking you through it so you know all the bits and pieces that go into builds like this as well. Also have hose to go from the back of the intake to the brake booster to actually pull vacuum on that. Of course, new hose clamps. Got some trans fluid as well. Going to top off that transmission before we start it, or fill it, I should say. It's bone dry right now. So once we get that drive shaft installed, we're then going to go ahead and fill the transmission up. And then to complement this stainless Black Widow muffler, I have several feet of stainless tube. I have a stainless Y-pipe here. So on the outside it looks pretty rough, but on the inside it's actually very nice and smooth. I was actually pretty impressed with that, especially for the cost. It was quite cheap. We have the flex coupler as well for the exhaust. That's important to prevent any cracks. We have a high flow cat here. I believe this one is from Flowmaster if I'm not mistaken. And we have a few of these J-bends. Those are going to allow us to make pie cuts and basically create all the bends that we need for this custom exhaust. It'll be fun. You go into the car, do some pie cuts, do some welding, and hopefully have an exhaust by the end of the weekend. The drive shaft has been installed. Going all the way back to there. So we have plenty of room to tuck up the exhaust in here, which is nice. So I'm going to start working on that now. The exhaust is basically going to come over here and go right there. So I'm going to start building off these V-bands. I'm going to tack on some pieces, pull them off, put in the O2 bungs, and basically pull over the exhaust to this side and have it go over here, track down. That's why I have all of this heat shielding down here, and then track over there where you can see that indent that the exhaust goes through. It's going to be a lot of time laying here underneath the car, but it's a small win, so I'm stoked that the drive shaft is in. So unfortunately, to install the heat wrap I want to do below, it'll be much easier if I take off the headers. I hadn't torqued them down yet, they were just being held in place, but I do have to remove the dipstick right there that the socket wrench is on, and then pull the header bolts and drop the headers out the bottom. I can then wrap the starter cables that you see down there. They have a jankily put together wrap on them right now. So I'm going to basically metal zip tie those and rewrap it. And then wrap the fuel lines that, I don't know if you can see it down there, but they're pretty close to the header, and I'm not a huge fan of that. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap them, and hopefully that should help with heat. Alright, so you can see down here how I wrapped the fuel line going up, and then right there the wires around the starter are wrapped and everything. That one is at least plastic covered right there in the middle, but it's a little bit further away from the headers. So everything near the heat here is pretty well wrapped up and covered. Here's a better shot at the starter wires here. So you can tell I did a wrap, and I actually wasn't able to use the Velcro aspect of this one. So just because the weird way I had to wrap it. So I actually used the stainless zip ties basically to wrap it around and encapsulate all the wires, keep them in place, and also pull them back as far away from the header as possible. So my shifter hole doesn't quite line up. Basically, it's hitting, now that I actually have the shifter installed, it hits right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and trim out a little extra, and then I can move over the transmission the final like quarter-inch or so and be able to start filling it up and get everything buttoned up. In order to get that section cut, I'm going to go ahead and use my trusty cutoff wheel. Basically come in here, cut, just a little bit, like a ½ inch or so off of there, and then clean up the corners. I might have to use a die grinder or something for rounding out the corners as well. So I finished cutting the hole here in the tunnel to give the shifter adequate room. I also actually cut a little bit extra here at the top so I could reach the bolts to get it out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm basically just going to remove this guy and go ahead and start filling the transmission. Just venting a little bit, I guess, but one thing that's super annoying is when I don't get around to installing a part for a while and go to install it or use it and realize it's defective, hopefully not the wrong one, then that's on me, but if it's defective, that's super annoying, especially if it's out of the return policy. So I bought the oil pan kit and it came with this dipstick. One thing that's super annoying is this thing is hard to get out and damn near impossible to get back in from the top. So basically you have to feed it in slowly and and find a sweet spot. It won't even go in that way. It's basically like that, and jam this thing in there. There are no kinks, no issues with the tube at all that aren't supposed to be there. So yeah, I'm gonna have to get another one because it's a piece of crap. So check your stuff and don't let it sit on the shelf for a while before you install it.